In today's conversation, we're going to torque it back to some of the original concepts that we have brought forth as a result of study of Neville's work, and more importantly, integration, applying the principles. I'm a huge fan of the concept knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. So much of what Neville refers to is based on pragmatic and practical integration from some of the most deepest and powerful information available found in the Bible. We're always going to interpret it based on our current level or our current rearrangement of our mind. Whatever information, whatever interaction we have, this outer world experience is both revealing and inspiring at the same time. That stated, we want to weave it back to some of the original conversations, and we want to weave it together based on experiences and examples. Now, I realize that James Allen, who was one of my inspirational factors in this journey, has brought forth many great works that can be borrowed, adapted, adopted, and integrated into our being. It was said that, and I was reading this somewhere, that Lily Allen, who was his wife, said that James never, ever spoke about something, never wrote about something, unless he thoroughly put it to the test, like Neville did, yet has this air of mysticism and philosophy, which I believe all is one. If we track back the roots to the earlier stages of how this information came to be, it was all one. Everything was one. Now, one of the things that we do in our mind is, and I say this all the time, is we take things apart. We separate things so we can understand it, so we can compare it. We say outer world, inner world. We say this direction or that direction. Do I do this or do I do that? And what appears as conflicting is realized to be only conflicting in the mind. And that when we remove this conflict in our mind, we're able to integrate what we see in the five sensory experience as well as the inner world to realize, as Neville states, we are all imagination. Now, from my own perspective, I identify with, and I've talked about this in the last few videos as we weave this together, the concepts of states and identity. I identify with the concept of entrepreneur. Now, this identity, which I believe is my thoroughbred, it was provided to me, and each of us has our own purpose, and it could be many of them, as a mission, you could say, or a desire, or whatever word you want to use for it, to utilize the two gifts of speech and mind. So that's why I resonate so much with the concept of mental alchemy, which is rearrangement of the mind to be able to reveal the resources and relationships that are in what we would call the outer world and harmonize them, connect the dots together to bring forth yield or product or service. I've always been interested in that. When I was in corporate, I had an opportunity, which it was paid for by the corporation, to go to university and acquire a business degree. I started taking the courses and I was doing really well, but I dropped it. And one of the reasons why I dropped it was because it was a distinct pathway. I take the courses, I get my degree, I perhaps become an MBA, and then I move up in the ladder of corporate into chief executive officer. That was one of the pathways. One that was very fascinating for me because I very much value the concept of disciplined business building and integration of complex information in a way that's systematized. However, there was a deeper side of me. I call this the entrepreneur, who is unconventional, not really a fan of rules, let's say. And the way we encounter innovation is by changing things around in this outer world, rearranging it by rearranging our mind, because we can see the vision of what Neville refers to as the unseen reality. Now, this is not to say that the CEO doesn't see that. What I interpret this as two distinct pathways to the same oneness. We're all going to the same destination. Neville refers to this as the promise. And we're always going to commit to that which we truly love. So I want to play a clip from one of Neville's lectures, Loyalty to the Unseen Reality, to contribute to this discussion, as well as we're going to read a quote from James Allen here, which I've woven in here, and intuitively so, to bring this further together in harmony towards contribution to what you desire to bring forth, which is your true self, true identity, as well as living from that state.
If you see it clearly, you will see that faith does not give reality to unseen things. It is loyalty to the unseen reality that gives meaning to the word faith. All things exist. Eternity exists, and all things in eternity independent of creation. So on this level, the shadow level, we do not see the reality. We do not see the source, the cause of it all. That's where we are called upon to exercise faith. Loyalty to unseen reality. It really is the abandonment of self. It's an act of self-commission. A man cannot commit himself to what he does not love. And scriptural faith is faith in God. So any idea that we have of God, which does not spontaneously call forth out of our hearts the feeling of love, is not a true idea of God.
So let's go deeper into this via the quote from James Allen. He says, "He shall work out his own salvation, whether he believes it or not, for he cannot escape himself, nor transfer to another the eternal responsibility of his own soul. By no theological subterfuge shall he trick the law of his being, which shall shatter all his selfish makeshifts and excuses for right thinking and right doing. Nor shall God do for him that which it is destined his soul shall accomplish for itself." Now let's reflect upon this. So we're given the gifts of speech and mind, and we're here to mold this world of ours into the kingdom of love, that which we truly desire. And in the process, we identify with certain states, and we begin to live in and from that state. We dwell in it. As we maintain that, we realize our purpose. We bring forth what we desire. And we play our role. We bring forth this experience in a way that is based on who we truly are. Thus, we otherwise refer to this as alignment. So this is also very joyous. You mean what we got to do is be who we really are, live how we are really meant to live, and we shall have that what we truly desire, as well as learn the valuable gifts of speech and mind. And if whatever shows up on the journey, we are interpreting it from within, and we can find the accurate meaning within, and as a result, we shall shatter any kind of illusions and delusions about ourselves and the world, and bring forth. That's what I understand when James Allen is referring to, "Nor shall God do for him that which it is destined his soul shall accomplish for itself." So it's a partnership then. Just like, and I'm interpreting this from the entrepreneurial perspective, one of our things is we like partnerships. We connect with other entrepreneurs, and we create partnership opportunities. We spawn businesses, joint ventures, partnerships. So this is a partnership. See, I resonate with this. Now, If I go back to that experience I'm talking about, in which I'm looking at the MBA pathway and also the entrepreneurial pathway, even though it's about business building, they are two distinct contributions. And they're one. So for example, in my consulting, when I work with businesses and they're in the entrepreneurial stage and they're growing rapidly, and I recognize that they're bringing in a lot of sales and they have a lot to fulfill on, there's more opportunities, and the entrepreneur is fanatical, very radical, constantly seizing opportunities. And as Sun Tzu says, opportunities multiply as they're seized. They're constantly seizing these opportunities, therefore bringing a higher degree of, you would say, demand for fulfillment or service. At this point, I usually say to them, perhaps we should consider bringing on some expertise, perhaps somebody who is an operationals manager. And as the business grows, we start to integrate the MBAs, and they go in and they look at the systems and the processes or lack thereof, and they refine it, and they bring it all into harmony, and the business grows from a small business into a larger business, and they start to expand. So we can see we're all part of this gigantic puzzle. And for me, I am more on the alignment with the entrepreneurial pathway. Now, it's not to say that I cannot integrate the MBA principles, because I was actually groomed by civil engineers. So as a result of being groomed by civil engineers, and they taught me the process and the systems building side, I became very well-rounded to be able to provide the kind of consulting that I do, where I'm able to see it from multi-dimensional perspectives. So we call this integration. We're bringing it all together. Now, how does this relate to our discussion? Because all of these things I had to learn, and there are things that you have to learn. And the things that you have to learn in relation to this discussion is the application of the technique, which is to imagine the feeling of the wish fulfilled and dwell in the state. And by dwelling in that state, all else is done through you and unto you. Thus, you have achieved a union. And that's what James Allen was talking about here. And this can be realized more so each day through application, knowledge plus experience, putting the concepts to use, picking a goal, seeing it all the way to completion to acquire the experience. So now we're talking about consciousness. He says, let me lay the foundation of this principle. Consciousness is the one and only reality. We are incapable of seeing other than the contents of our own consciousness. So this is inviting us then to work on ourselves, to focus on ourselves, and to be the best that we can be each day through observing what our indications are of who we really are based on how we integrate the five sensory experience. For example, when I reflect back that story, I realized that even though it was very lucrative to go down that pathway, which would bring me into CEO of a company, might not have been that company, I also recognized that it wasn't really what I truly desired. And upon reflection of that, I had to follow the heart desire. I mean, I didn't have to. I was given the choice. It was suggested to me. So I followed what I truly love. As a result of following what I truly love, the mind rearranged. I maintained that state of mind. And I supplemented it with what I call the four modalities: self-talk, revision, subconscious mind audios, and environment. And I'll put a link in the description for those discussions. Now, as a result of that, my capabilities, my skills were cultivated. I knew what to do, what to cultivate. And I didn't necessarily need the approval from the outer world. I went within. Now, I was still learning how this stuff works, and I'm still learning how this stuff works. So every day, I learned to connect back to what I would call the true inner voice, which is intuition, which was always guiding me. As Neville states, God speaks through the medium of our desires. So this is all one, and we're segmenting it as we go through, but we're putting it all back together again, so we feel connected. Connection. Love and oneness seems to be one of the universal threads in all of these philosophies, be it James Allen, be it Napoleon Hill, be it Neville Goddard, or any kind of spiritual philosophies. This seems to be the universal thread. He says, we radiate the world that surrounds us by the intensity of our imagination and feeling. So that what we love, we can imagine it as done, and it radiates as this outer world experience. He says, but this third dimensional world of ours, otherwise referred to as the outer world, time beats slowly, and so we do not always observe the relationship of the visible world to our inner nature. So this is interesting. If faith is loyalty to the unseen reality and a commitment to that which we love, with the assumption that it is done, this world, the outer world, the five sensory experience, we recognize that it is in harmony and in contribution to bringing forth what we desire. It is rearranging as a result of the rearrangement of the mind, selecting the scene in the, as he puts it, everything is done, the already complete reality. Now, all of this is designed to facilitate a deeper relationship and harmony with what I would call the subconscious realm. There is an inner world, and this inner world is vast, as Charles Haanel puts it in the Master Key System. We have the opportunity to build a relationship with this subconscious realm, otherwise known as the divine realm. This is done through the recognition that we receive the desires within, and we express the desires by maintaining, committed to that state, the outcome. Staying committed, simply put. So as when James Allen was referring to, nor shall God do for him that which it is destined that his soul shall accomplish for itself. What the soul is destined to accomplish for itself is the loyalty to the unseen reality. It is the interpretation of the five sensory experience in a way, no matter what shows up on the journey, interpreting it as in harmony, as in contribution. Now, I can always speak about this from the entrepreneurial perspective, because when we're involved with business building, as we go through the journey, whatever shows up is an opportunity. Now, this sounds like a radically altered state. To some people, you might even be considered delusional. What do you mean everything is an opportunity? I see obstacle here. If we reflect deeper on that and we take a survey, we'll realize that we're not the only ones seeing that opportunity there. There are others who may not even identify with the word entrepreneur, who see that as an opportunity in some shape or form. Thus, everything is and isn't at the same time, and we are the ones interpreting within. And if it's your natural state, if it's who you are, then you're going to see it as opportunity, and it's going to be so obvious to you. But this is not only to be spoken about the entrepreneurial realm. This is also spoken in other realms of existence, whatever it is that you want, relationships, friendships, intellectual pursuits, whatever it is, the power is within you, and the interpretation is within you. You are the one interpreting this, and this is all consciousness. It is one. So when we take things apart in our mind, we want to make sure that we're putting it back together again, so we don't create unnecessary complexity and convolution. And this is simply done by dwelling in the state, maintaining the state of mind, realizing that it is done, and not becoming overly reactive to the five sensory experience. And recognize also, at the same time, that if you are reactive to the five sensory experience, we go back to what I was saying earlier, that reality, in this context, we're referring to the five sensory experience. So even though he's stating that consciousness is the one and only reality, as stated, we take things apart in our mind, we segment it so we can understand and put it back together again. So we're saying the five sensory experience is actually the same experience of the mind. It's what's going on within. It's one. It's an externalization of mind. Thus stated, the five sensory experience is rearranging. How is it rearranging? Through your behaviors, through your capabilities, we refer back to the Robert Dilts model, as well as the environmental changes in ways that you might be consciously aware of, or will be more loyalty to the unseen reality, no matter what the five sensory experience says, which is more entrepreneurial-like. This would explain my rebelliousness growing up. I was a very rebellious child and teenager, and I did not like to be told what to do. So many entrepreneurs that I speak to come from this background. And the reason why they don't like to be told what to do is because they see something in their imagination and they believe it. When a person gets to a certain level of understanding of how this works, they're now reevaluating the five sensory suggestions from their inner world and assessing from that perspective. Now, as stated, we're all on this journey. So it's not just entrepreneurs, it's not just MBAs, it's not just anyone of any identity whatsoever. We're all one. We're all considered the brothers and sisters of the One, the children of the Most High. So we focus then on the contents of our consciousness. We commit to that what we desire to bring forth, and we remain on the journey by maintaining the state. And as things show up on the journey, we have the power to change the meaning that we associate with it, accept it for what it is, or exclude it out of consciousness through the act of revision. By changing and revising our past, we have the ability to let go of the subconscious identification to the five sensory experience in the eternal now, based on some association of the past that is in our subconscious, that is not necessarily true or valid for this particular point in time. He says, now that is really what I meant. You and I can contemplate an ideal and become it by falling in love with it. So again, contemplate an ideal, that which you truly desire, and you fall in love with it. You automatically fall in love with it. You fall in love with it because that is the relationship with the divine realm. It is at this level of our being, our conscious level of our being, the journey to what we would also refer to as the awakening. Because as you bring forth your desires, and I've said this many times, you also realize who you really are, more and more so each day. And as part of my entrepreneurial identity, I'm not a fan and never was a fan of people telling me who I am. I want to find out for my own. I want to go on this journey. This is what James Allen refers to, my destiny, in which my soul wants to accomplish this relationship with the divine realm through the integration of this information and the experience of producing the results, as in the entrepreneurial success, or whatever success that you desire. So he gives a nice distinction here. Faith is believing what is incredible. Hope is hoping when all things are hopeless. And love is forgiving what is unforgivable. What are we forgiving? We're forgiving aspects about ourselves. As stated in the last few discussions, from one of my early mentors, he had stated to me, one of the greatest things you could do in life is to turn the enemy into a friend. Where's the enemy? The enemy is within, externalizing as outer people to reveal the enemy within. Or the enemy is within through what we call overthinking or mental chatter. And what we want to do is release from that mental chatter and identify with what we would call the true inner voice. So he states, in relation to that excerpt, love is our birthright. Love is the fundamental necessity of our life. We do not go seeking for that which you are. Those who go seeking for love only make manifest their own lovelessness. And the loveless never find love. Love is within, and love externalizes as the ideal relationship, the ideal lifestyle, the ideal business, the ideal whatever that is destined for your soul to accomplish for itself through the dwelling in that state. Because if you truly want to bring forth what you desire, and you know that the way is to dwell in the state, and you set up your environment, and you do all the things that we talk about in personal development to bring you and maintain that state, then you are living in love. And sometimes you'll hear me say flow. To me, flow and love is the same thing. I feel love when I'm in flow. That's why I suggest it. And I use the word flow interchangeably with love because the entrepreneur really resonates with that concept of flow. Because the textbook definition of flow is where challenge meets skill. So as an entrepreneur, it is said that we go down this journey and experience challenge in the outer world, and we convert it into opportunity, or convert it into yield, or convert it into results, or convert it into joint ventures, partnerships, business opportunities, services, products, front end, back end, all those things we talk about in Jay Abraham's book, Mr. X and Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got, which I'll put a link in the description to those 2 videos. All of those things are facilitated by loving the journey. We love the journey. We love to be in flow. We love it. We love the challenges. And those challenges don't seem stressful. In the last video, I talked about this, about rearranging the mind when I was running the treadmill, but I didn't feel any pain. Why is that? That's because I love running the treadmill. I love working out. I love lifting weights. I love doing these things. And I love the entrepreneurial journey. And I love making these videos, and I love sharing. And because I love doing these things, this is love. And life is so much more than labor. It is love. And to really simplify this, it says, only the loving find love, and they never have to seek it. Interesting. Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek it. Brings us into our concept of self. How do we see ourselves? How do we imagine ourselves to be? How do we talk to ourselves when we are referring to ourselves in relation to people, environment, circumstance, and information? We have the power to change it by changing our inner dialogue, through affirmations, through inner voice conversations, as I referred to in that video, which I discussed the distinct difference between mental chatter and true inner voice, and some of the modalities that I had learned from Think and Grow Rich, like the Invisible Council, that help with that. I'll put a link in the description. All of this is happening in consciousness. This is happening in imagination. We're imagining all these things. And as a result of imagining all these things, the concept of ourself changes. And many ways to imagine ourselves. But if we're going to imagine ourselves and live this philosophy, then imagine ourselves from a place of love. Do what we love to do, and think about ourselves and reflect upon ourselves from a place of love. And as a result of that, we will also experience that in the outer world, because the outer world is a reflection. He says, because consciousness is the only reality, I must assume that I'm already that which I desire to be. If I do not believe that I am already what I want to be, then I will remain as I am and die in this limitation. Now he's talking about states. And we can create an affirmation to bring us into the state and maintain and dwell in that state. Say, I realize that I am divine perfection right now. I realize that I already am that which I desire to be. It is revealed to me more so each day through the 5 sensory experience. People, environment, circumstance, and information reveal to me via my inner conversations that reveal the truth, that brings forth the accurate interpretation of my experience on the journey to the fulfillment of what I desire to experience. As a result, I realize more so that I already am divine perfection, that I already am what I desire to be. And that which I desire is meant for me to desire. And I find it easier to bring forth what I desire. I experience this in my behaviors. I experience this in my interpretation. I experience this in my ability to find myself in state as a result of the 5 sensory interpretation, as well as my inner conversation interpretation of the 5 sensory experience that reveals how so everything is in relation and in harmony to my vision. As a result, I feel it. As a result of feeling it, I find myself in my true identity. As a result of dwelling in my true identity, the ideal thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors, and outer world circumstances and experiences reflect accordingly. I experience this more so each day as I realize that consciousness is the only reality, and I already am that which I desire to be. He says man is always looking for some prop on which to lean. He is always looking for some excuse to justify failure, knowing that we've been given the gifts of speech and mind. Now, we learn this on the journey, and we're constantly learning this. Each day, we may forget and find ourselves reactive and believe that we are the effect. And so we do this inner work. This is fun, because bringing forth our desires is fun. It's joyous. And then we experience the journey to be as joyous as the destination. He says, the revelation gives man no excuse for failure. His concept of himself is the cause of all his circumstances in his life. All changes must first come from within himself, and if he does not change on the outside, it is because he has not changed within. That's why I really like the work of James Allen. Listening to As a Man Thinketh, when I run regularly, I've probably listened to it many thousands of times, because it's the same information. And for whatever the reason may be, I was forgetting it, because I became reactive to the outer world and I thought I was the effect of the outer world. But I want to maintain inner locus of control, as we call it, seeing ourselves as the cause and one with the divine realm. And as a result of that, I'm able to interpret the five sensory experience to reflect accordingly. So I listened to it again and again and again, which was inspired by the Bible and some Buddhist texts that he was inspired by, is all bringing us back into this idea of what Neville speaks of, that all changes must first come from within. And so to be reminded by that and to integrate based on that perspective what we are learning of creating the changes within, which is called rearrangement of the mind, we're able to notice that our behaviors change and how we relate to people, environment, circumstance, and even information. Because information, people, environment, and circumstance is both inspiring, giving us insights and perspectives, as well as revealing to us about the concept of ourselves, and we can make adjustments accordingly. And when I say making adjustments accordingly, we build it on the foundation that who we really are is divine perfection. And we may have believed disempowering programming about ourselves in relation to others, people, environment, circumstance, and we have the opportunity, by bringing forth our heart desire, to release from those limiting beliefs. He says, when a man fully understands this, he knows that public opinion does not matter, for men only tell him who he is. The behavior of men constantly tell me who I have conceived myself to be. So these are the brothers and sisters. People in the everyday world teach us about ourselves. As mentioned in the last video, when I would do the presentations, if I didn't talk to 5 people, which was for me getting myself in the state, I would experience the people to be separate. In my mind, I saw it as separate. I was creating unnecessary complexity and convolution, not seeing myself one with the audience, that they are the brothers and sisters. When I talk to 5 people, and I can't say that will work for you, that works for me, that puts me into state. Then when I talk to those people, when I integrate myself, which happens automatically by going into that state, and doing the presentation, I am one with the audience. I'm one with them. I experience what is also referred to as the cybernetic loop. The student and teacher are one. They are the student and the teacher, and I'm also the student and teacher, and it is experienced as one in the moment. And that holds the key to self-persuasion. Because when you experience that oneness, then your inner world is in harmony with the outer world. And since the causative factor is in the inner world, you can change your assumptions real time and observe as the outer world changes real time to reflect. Those that are very effective at communication, otherwise we refer to them as effective persuaders or influencers, are doing this within themselves. And we have the power to do it. All of us do. No matter what you desire, remember, nothing is impossible. What is proved once was only imagined. So begin by imagining a state and persuading yourself that you're in it. Blake said, the ancients believe that if you are self-persuaded, it is so. There was a time in imagination when a firm persuasion moved mountains. You can remove the seemingly mountainous obstacles which confront you by simply ignoring them and assuming the end. Now, when we're referring to ignoring them and assuming the end, you can also look at this as realizing that it is in contribution, some shape, somehow. And if you want to know how so, you can ask yourself within. You can say, how is this an opportunity rather than an obstacle? And then commune with yourself. Assume that it is done, that you will get the answer, and you will find the answer. The answer will show up. And from the entrepreneurial perspective, this has never been known to fail for me. Whatever is necessary to be removed for you to fulfill what you have assumed will be done for you as long as you remain faithful to yourself, the source of all life. He says, I urge you not to go to anyone on the outside. Remember, people are inspiring or revealing, and we want to assume that we can understand what they're inspiring us to, which is our own desire, as well as understand what they are revealing about the concepts of ourself, both what we subconsciously believe to be true about ourselves. He says you can become self-persuaded of anything, and if you do, it will project itself on your screen of space. Take gold, the wisdom-revealed truth. Take silver, the knowledge which comes from experience, or the precious stones of noble and lovely thoughts, for fire will not destroy them. And when you are in doubt, do the loving thing. So let's simplify this then, even further. If you are in doubt, do the loving thing. We always know what love means. What is the loving thing? Do the loving thing, and we all automatically find ourselves in the state. He says, if you think something terrible is going to happen, rub it out of your mind. So again, what do? When in doubt, do the loving thing. When we do the loving thing, we find ourselves in the ideal state of mind. When we find ourselves in the ideal state of mind, the ideal thoughts, emotions, behaviors, actions, outer world interpretations, all that stuff happens automatically. And as complex as this had appeared to me in certain stages of my journey, I got to reflect back on what James Allen said here. He said, by no theological subterfuge shall he trick the law of his being, which shall shatter all his selfish makeshifts and excuses for right thinking and right doing. Now, for me, that has a very powerful and deep meaning. It means that right thinking, as in applying all this stuff and putting into use, committing to the desire, seeing it all the way to completion, all these things that we have been talking about, which is in the category of right doing, shall automatically shatter all the makeshifts and the excuses and the doubt. Very powerful. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.